Rekindling Yoga podcast again and YouTube these days. And today's guest is Eddie Stern. Welcome, Eddie.
Hey, Adam.
Lovely to have you back. I think it was a number of years ago now that we spoke. And at that time, it was the start of lockdown, I believe. Well, the start, the middle of lockdown. It all kind of gets confused around those lockdown years. But you'd been making sounds, at least moving away from Ashtanga, I think, at that roughly around that period. And it seems like things have shifted again since we last spoke.
Yeah, most definitely they have. So I'm entering a new phase, which is also feels like an old phase of my life, and I'm super duper enjoying it and very happy. Recapturing the spirit of yoga that I had when I started doing yoga in the 1980s, and recapturing the whole sense of joy and experimentation and freedom and excitement and curiosity that that really sort of drove my I guess you could call it my search.
So, as you were doing the Ashtanga practice for all those years, how do you remember those practices over that time? Were they in the back of your mind, or did you just get completely enmeshed in that practice? And that's the first question. The second question is what kind of provoked the kind of quite a shift? Or was it slow, or was it all of a sudden that you kind of came out of that trajectory of very much being ensconced in the Ashtanga world and practice? Yeah.
Right. I've always been interested in a variety of things. So, for example, even during all those years when I was just doing Ashtanga yoga as the asana practice, I was still studying Sanskrit. I was learning about ritual. I was studying philosophy. There was that part of my spiritual life always was very involved. Those were things that were never addressed within the Ashtanga yoga world, but they were the things that actually kind of brought me to yoga. And so the other types of hatha yoga practices, I really didn't think about them for the better part of 2 decades all that much. But I'd say around the early 2010s when I started getting involved in scientific research, and I became more involved in bringing yoga into public education under the heading of health and wellness practices. Then I started having to shift the way that I was teaching people and the way I was doing things, because Ashtanga yoga was not going to be possible for them, relevant for them, or even beneficial for them. And that sort of set me off on a route of experimentation and investigation. I would say that even during the years of like 2010 or 12, up until about 2020 or 21, I was still, mainly teaching Ashtanga yoga, but then I was using these other sort of yoga therapy types of things where they were needed. But my body had already started to fall apart a little bit. My body had started to fall apart from extreme yoga. It had started to fall apart from a lot of teaching. So from the years of, the early 2000s up until we closed the temple for the first time on Broome Street and moved out to Brooklyn, we had a lot of people coming through the school. And so maybe there'd be an average day would be like 120 people or so for the Mysore practice. So it started 5:45 and then I would end at like, noon or so. And then that went on for years. So it was a lot of wear and tear on the body. And I was not feeling, and there was a bunch of time that went by where I wasn't feeling nourished by doing the same sequences again and again. It was becoming performative, and it was also becoming, for me, very focused on just getting through it. This was a thing, and you just have to get through it, and then you've done your practice, and then blah blah blah.
So, and you're doing that before teaching, I assume.
Correct. I was doing it before
Yeah.
teaching. The days were long.
Yeah.
Not super great for my body, not super great
Yeah.
for my emotional life, and not super great for my family life either.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so anyway, I'm by nature, I'm a compulsive person and I'm an obsessive person. I go deep into things. And so that spoke to, the structure of the practice and the kind of philosophy behind the practice. 6 days a week, don't change anything, spoke to this sort of obsessive compulsive part of me that was then given permission to be that kind of a person because it was being sanctified by somebody else's ideas about structure. And what that allowed me to do was make excuses for not examining myself because I thought I was doing things the way they were supposed to be done. And if I just did that really well, it would take care of everything else. And then voila, enlightenment, perfection, or at least you've cemented your place in the hierarchy. All those things, not healthy. And so, if that's part of your nature and part of your personality, but whatever your nature is and whatever your personality is, if you're not acknowledging what those things are, you will gravitate towards practices that are going to allow you to hide behind those things, thinking that this is sanctioned by the practice, therefore I don't have to deal with that other stuff. I can just, go for it or whatever. And so that's one of the ways that that I used the discipline of this practice. So it took me a long time to recognize that that's what I was doing. And one of the ways that I started to recognize that was by feeling not nourished and feeling like I wasn't doing a spiritual practice anymore and that I hadn't been doing one for like over a decade. All I had been doing was going through the motions of doing the sequences. But that wasn't a spiritual practice. That was just trying to be perfect or trying to be good at someone else's idea of what I should be doing. Okay. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't like school in the first place, like, going to regular school, like high school, because, I didn't go to college until much later, but I didn't like it because I felt like, well, all I'm doing in school is getting good at other people's ideas. And then I'm being graded on other people's ideas about what I should be excelling at.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
where is meaning? Where is purpose? What does this have to do with like real life? And so then I I got into this system of yoga where it was the same thing. Here's how you do it. This is the expectation of what makes you good. Correct method, incorrect method, a good lady, bad lady, all that bullshit. And what I did was I took all this stuff that I had been trained with in regular education, high school, all that, um, and sort of transpose that into this level of spiritual practice, and I just brought all that stuff with me. And so on a very subtle level, it was performative, and it was to meet the expectations of somebody else's ideas about what yoga was. Now, that's all fine and dandy for learning certain skills. Like in school, you learn some grammar, you learn some basic math. Hopefully that will serve you in your life. And everything has to be done in context. So what are the building blocks that we're learning in, say, something like Ashtanga yoga? What are those building blocks for? They're probably for learning about shifting your awareness inward so that you can have an experience of yourself. Now, I think this happens for many, many people, especially early on in the practice when it's very new and you're experimenting and you're excited.
Yeah.
But if something becomes just a routine and a habit and a compulsion because you feel that you have to practice in a particular way in this particular time frame, et cetera, for the rest of your life, then all of a sudden you put a little bit of a blinder on creativity, exploration, curiosity, enthusiasm, all these types of things that the Hatha Yoga Pratipika says are the foundations of success in spiritual practice and sadhana, the means of knowing who you are. So basically, that's kind of like what I was doing to myself. And it took me a few years to feel all of these things again, because I had numbed myself to feeling and allowing myself to feel where I needed to grow. And the allowance to grow, because there was a fear mechanism that, oh, if I grow beyond this, then I won't be part of this. And then maybe I'll be, they'll be shamed, or I'll be, dismissed, or I'll be, not liked anymore by, the leaders of this particular, incarnation of Ashtanga Yoga. So all those types of things also needed to be dealt with, because my identity was so wrapped up in Ashtanga Yoga. And not only my identity as a practitioner, but my identity of, what sort of a place do I have in the whole Ashtanga Yoga world, of whether it was publishing the books of Pattabhi Jois, or et cetera, et cetera. So that was an interesting time period from like 2021 up until this year. It wasn't very hard for me to stop practicing Ashtanga Yoga completely. That wasn't very difficult, because already I needed something different in my body. But the hard thing was stopping teaching it, because there was a lot of fear about not teaching it anymore. Would I lose students? The answer to that is yes, I will, and I have. Will I confuse people who have been learning with me for a long time? Yes, I definitely will. And that has happened. But will I be happier? 100%. Will I feel that I'm capturing meaning and purpose in my relationship with yoga again? 100%. Am I willing to have my yoga classes now all of a sudden a little bit be of a different size, because I'm teaching something radically different? I'm 100% okay with that. And so I love yoga. That's why I started doing yoga in the 1980s, years before I met Pattabhi Jois, years before I went to Mysore. My life was committed to yoga and to spiritual practice. That hasn't changed at all. And all that I've done in the past few years is I've allowed myself to rekindle that early relationship that I had with it. And that is, that is crucial for all of us to do in our relationships with, whether it's with people, spiritual practice, our work, our jobs, our lives. We have to rekindle love and joy and meaning in the things that we're doing. And if we're in jobs that we have to do them because we need to make money, that happens as well. That's a part of life. But there are pockets of the day where you can rekindle your connection to what are the things that you have in you that you need to express. Maybe you express them for 15 minutes a day while you meditate, or half an hour a day while you write, or whatever it might be. That thing needs to be there. And that's what life is. Life is creative expression everywhere around us, in our cells, to the changing seasons. It's all one huge unfolding, constant creative process that we're a part of. And if we don't allow ourselves to be part of that creative process, we're going to stagnate, and we're going to put ourselves in boxes, and we're not going to find the freedom of expression that we all have within us.
I think you put your finger on the practice and the nature.
Question.
No, that's very nice. I mean, and I think you put. I mean, it's not like many people, I think, haven't also kind of gone through exactly the same feelings that you put your finger on. It's just that you happen to have been in a certain position within the Ashtanga community, which made it particularly revelationary when you have changed. As you have changed. I mean, the thing with practice is,
that's true. One point on that is that I'm amazed at how many people have come up to me and thanked me for saying the things that I'm saying now, because it gives them permission to actually do something different, change something that hasn't been working for them for a long period of time, or just be a little bit free in their relationship with the spiritual practice. And so that's like, that's worth it. That's gratifying.
Mm. Okay, I'm going to
Go
ask
ahead. Sorry.
I was going to ask another question now that came to me before. When you were doing the Ashtanga practices, and you were doing also your Sanskrit and your puja, and as you know, everyone knows you've done that for years. How did you square the two together at that time? You just kind of, you said, I didn't feel like I was doing a spiritual practice in my yoga, but obviously that you were doing, in the broader sense, many things that were spiritual practice. So how do the two relate? How did the Ashtanga practice at that time relate to all the work you did with the Broome Street Temple?
Right. At a certain point, the Ashtanga yoga practices were something that I felt that I had to do because I was part of that world.
Right.
That's all. I mean, honestly, and they were a struggle for me to do because, as I've said, like on many occasions, physically, I'm kind of a lazy person. Like I don't like to. I had a hard time maintaining a 6-day a week practice. There was very, very small pockets of time where I could maintain the intensity level consistently. I just couldn't do it. I like smaller bouts of physical activity. Like, I don't mind some high intensity stuff. And, now I like cardio and weight training and all these types of things, but I do them in smaller bouts and I do them with more space around me. So to maintain 6 days a week was hard, especially, when it came to doing third or fourth or even intermediate, which I kind of never really liked that series anyway. And even if I was just going to do primary every day, sometimes it was like a real struggle just to get through it. And so I'd have a few good days in a row and then a bunch of bad days in a row. And I was starting to measure my practice days by good and bad, by, oh, I could do it, or, oh, I couldn't do it. That is not a good mindset for yoga. And I'm not saying everyone has that mindset, but it's a mindset that I had. And honestly, I think it was a mindset that was encouraged by the way the system is being taught. Because when I was doing other yogas, I never had that sense. When I was doing, the hatha yoga practices that I'd done in various places before I came to Mysore, I never, ever, ever had that feeling inside of me of a good day or a bad day. It was all just the things that you would do.
Yeah, they're just so much less athletic, so they don't have that kind of attachment to it, right? Yeah.
And so again, not everybody falls into this type of a mindset, but I certainly did. That means I had it in me already. So it was good that it got drawn out. It just took me a long time to acknowledge it. So the level of physicality required, I could not maintain. And I should have, honestly, stopped doing, the practices a good 10 or 15 years earlier from now than I did. If I'd been listening, and I hadn't been listening, I wasn't. So, but everyone has a different body and everyone's bodies have different thresholds. And it's very important that, we listen to those thresholds, and as teachers, we make sure that we can address those thresholds in other people and make sure that what they're doing is healthy and not overly repetitive, which isn't terribly good for anyone. What was your question again? I'm sorry.
Don't remember where we were going with this. Oh no, it was a question of how the Ashtanga practice related to the Broome Street Temple and the spiritual practice you were doing there.
Right.
Did you imagine or see any connection between the asana and the spiritual with a more cerebral or religious bent, as it were? I don't know how to put that. You know what I mean? I think. Yeah.
It's definitely religious. I mean, I've been practicing Hinduism for years, and it's a way of life. It's spiritual and it's also religious. It's all those things. There was no relation. I needed a temple because that was an expression of my heart. So, there's really no connection between the Ashtanga yoga practices and the temple. The temple is an expression of my own affinity and draw towards Hinduism and Hindu practices, and it speaks to the deepest parts of my spiritual life. That's where I feel the most connection, and I like to do asana practices to calm my nervous system, to calm the body, and to have a sort of a deep sense of inner balance and evenness. That's my favorite use of asanas. And I like to use pranayama for the same reasons, to bring this different sort of sense of quiet to the mind and a sense of evenness, of flow of, you say, prana and awareness through the whole body in a way which is slightly more subtle than in the asanas. And then mantra and offerings and service address, sort of my spiritual heart and my sense of coming into contact with that part of myself which is ineffable or invisible, but that when I form that contact with it daily, I feel like I've addressed the essential nature of being. And that's what ritual does for me. And I like to create a space where other people can be in that as well. And that's what a temple is, where you can come in and have contact with this part of yourself, which is the invisible part, but is essentially you. And I found contact through that in the deepest way and in the deepest sense through the practices of Hinduism. So that's what the temple is. That's why we have it. And this is also one of the reasons why it was essential for me to change the way that I was doing yoga asanas, because I needed to do them the way that my body needed them to be done so that I could be a better human being, better person, better everything in this world I'm a part of. And the way that I had been doing them wasn't making me that, because I was suppressing so much and going against my nature. It was making me have, low hidden levels of competition, of anger, of narcissism, of neediness, of all these sort of hidden little subtle things that that I was masking through being good at something. And so I had to change all those things because I wanted to. I didn't want to be that person with all this bubbling undercurrent underneath me. I want to be happy. I want to be free. I want to be flowing. I want to connect with people. I want to be effective. I want to participate in all like the amazing new discoveries that are going on in the world. I want to be free and happy and joyful and kind and humble and listening in all of these spaces. And before I couldn't do that because I needed to project myself. And by projecting myself, I was, either argumentative or, with people about philosophy or about yoga systems or, needing to be right all the time. And all that stuff was becoming a part of my personality. Like I didn't want to be that person anymore because that was not really me. But I was allowing it to be me. So, but just to go back to the temple again, and this is why when we got our space on Broome Street back again, instead of opening a yoga school again, I said, I'm not going to do that. We're just going to open a temple. And part of the feature of the temple will be that there'll be some yoga classes there, because you have this huge umbrella of dharmic practices in India. And, Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, the various names that it goes by. And, whether people like it or not, yoga falls under that umbrella. And so here yoga is going to be under the larger umbrella of the dharmic practices, the ritual practices that you find in the Indic knowledge traditions. So that's what we did. The temple is primary, and the yoga, pranayama, meditation, everything we do falls under that larger umbrella. That was how I learned yoga in India. I'm talking years before Mysore. It was all under this umbrella of the 4 types of yoga. And the bhakti yoga, which encompasses ritual, puja, devotion, mantra, offerings, was as equally emphasized as everything else. And I think that equal emphasis is good. I like that.
You're still teaching a little bit of Ashtanga, or you're not teaching, but other people are teaching for you there, is that right?
They're not teaching for me, they're teaching themselves.
Independently at the temple. Yeah.
We have Ashtanga yoga in the temple still. There's a Mysore program 4 days a week.
Okay.
And there are 3 excellent people who teach it, a woman named Carly, a woman named Sheetal, and a woman named Manavi. And they are running that program. And Carly teaches a 1-lead primary a week as well. And I teach my classes, which are a little bit different. And if they need me to step in one day because someone can't make it, okay, I'll step in, no problem.
You'll still do it.
Yeah.
We've done it for a long time.
Yeah, I certainly remember how to do it. And there also the very important thing is like Ashtanga yoga has tremendous value in the world, and it has tremendous value to a lot of people. And so, there's no reason why in this temple they shouldn't be able to access the value that it has for them. I'm 100% aligned with that. No problem. And me, I'll do the things that I need to do that bring value to my life as well.
I was going to suggest that obviously it gave you a lot. It gave you, it gave you a discipline. It gave you a framework. But like any practice, is kind of like almost equivalent to the repetition. Practice meaning some kind of repetition or consistency of action is inevitably a kind of like a revolving door. Can lead to awareness or can lead to dullness and suppression. As you said, with your practice, when it becomes formulaic, it tends to go one way, whereas it's meant to go the other way, which is kind of ironic. But I think it's like anything; it can become a poison or a medicine, depending on how it's used. It seems like
I already had discipline. I had a shit ton of discipline.
You had it before you even started. So it was just kind of latch and key then. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was disciplined. All I was doing was yoga. In fact, I was doing a lot more of it, and various kinds. So I had discipline. And not only did I have discipline, I had facility. I learned primary series in Mysore in 3 weeks, and I learned intermediate series in Mysore in 3 weeks, and then I learned third series in 6 months, and then I started teaching, and then that really slowed down my progress for learning fourth, which I only got 3/4 of the way through. So up until the time I started teaching, I could do a lot of these things already. I made quick progress through it. So I had discipline and I had facility. I brought all that to the game with me already.
Doesn't sound bad for someone who says they don't really like moving. Let me phrase that as a question then. What do you think that Ashtanga did give you then? When you go away and you look back and think, I'm pleased that I got it. I got that. Can you say anything that you feel that you did come away with?
It's a hard question for me to answer because in my current practices that I do, they bear no resemblance to what I did for the previous decades. The yogas that I was learning, I was already counting my breaths when I was in poses. I don't have a fixation on doing mula or uddiyana bandha in the different postures now. I honestly don't know how to answer that question. What did it give me? What did I give to it? What did we give each other?
Oh, what did you
was
give
just,
it? Yes, yeah. I think there was a reciprocal exchange
I,
going on there. But
there has to be. I gave a lot to it. I gave my
you
time. I
did,
gave my
yeah,
life.
yeah.
I
Absolutely.
gave a lot
And a
to
lot
it.
of the work, a lot of the work that people know today is facilitated by you. I mean, maybe on a more philosophical bent, I often that one simple thing book I loved, but it comes back to that same kind of little thing that you mentioned there about the yoga, just simply for regulating nervous system, getting you into parasympathetic kind of states of being. But they also mentioned the pradipika, which my understanding would be that it's using the kind of spine and the nerves of the spine as a stimulation. There's a sense of stimulation or somewhat deregulating the nervous system to raise some energy. But how would you qualify then between those different what I said there?
I want to answer your last question now. What I received from Ashtanga yoga was many enduring friendships with wonderful people. This is really what has come out from all of those years spent doing the yoga, is some really enduring, wonderful, close friendships and a span of time spent with people working on a similar type of a thing, regardless of what the outcomes of those things were, good, bad, pleasure, pain, positive, negative, whatever. Time spent with people working on the same thing connects you in all sorts of wonderful ways. And so this is really what it is. Enduring friendships, enduring levels of care. And that has been very worthwhile to have spent a couple decades doing something that really was a struggle to do on many levels and brought a lot of pain in other ways. But caring friendships have emerged from there. And so that's a very positive thing. So that's my answer to that question. Next question.
I said it. Yeah,
Stimulate.
yeah. That you're the way that you phrase your yoga now, and in the book previously, is that it's simply for pacification of the nervous system, whereas I kind of perceive
No,
almost the opposite quality in the tantric hatha yoga.
it's not pacification of the nervous system.
Okay.
It's actually a stimulation of the parasympathetic nervous system. And the stimulation of the parasympathetic nervous system creates states of equilibrium. And Bhagavad Gita, Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. Yoga is equilibrium. Yoga Karamasu Kaushalam. Yoga is the skill of action to lead towards stita prajna, steady wisdom, steady intellect, steady chitta. So to do that, there needs to be equilibrium. In Patanjali and in Gita, there's no mention of Kundalini or any of these things. These are all Hatha Yoga practices. Hatha Yoga was concerned with awakening Kundalini Shakti, which is the creative force of the universe, dormant in every individual, which is basically when we identify on any level with our own separate self, Kundalini is asleep. When there is no identification down to every cell of our body of this being us as separate from the universe, then this creative power of the universe flows up through the spine, as it were. And so this is one of the essential differences between Patanjali and between Hatha Yoga. Patanjali has a little bit of a different project and uses asanas in a different way.
And it seems like you identify with the former, not the latter so much. Like it's more the kind of Patanjali in the classical yoga, you mentioned the Gita, and not the tantric aspects of hatha yoga of kind of using bandha, using breath to awaken something through the body, an energy through the body.
Yeah, see, everyone has, it's called adhikara or adhikari. Adhikari means your personal eligibility or qualifications based on your samskaras or imprints or impressions of what you can do, what your affinities are, what practices work for you.
Yeah.
Some people, they have the adhikari for hatha yoga or bhakti yoga or jnana yoga or service. And that's why there's so many different practices, because everyone is going to have a slightly different eligibility for doing different things in different ways. And this is one of the beauties of the yoga traditions and the Hindu traditions and the Dharmic traditions, is that they allow for diversity in approaches to knowing who you are. Definitely, I err on the side of Patanjali.
Yeah, I've sensed that for a while.
But I use some of the hatha yoga practices, a lot of them.
How do you structure those now? How do you base that? I mean, because I know you're also doing, you've shown yourself in the gym and doing skipping. I know you were skipping for a while. I don't know whether you're still skipping,
No.
and doing other kind of trainings. How do you structure your yoga then? I mean, you mentioned it's for relaxation, getting to the right state of energy. Can you give any caveats about how you might look to what you're teaching now?
Sure. And again, I'm not teaching it for relaxation. Relaxation is sort of a different thing. And words are important, and I know you care about words.
I do care about words. Well, so how would you say it? Is it not relaxation? I'm struggling to find the right word. And pacification wasn't right for you either. So what word would you replace there?
Deep states of inner calm.
Okay.
Deep states of balance. And that's different than relaxation. Relaxation, you can check out during relaxation.
Yeah.
Maybe
what about radical relaxation?
That is a good title for a book. You go for it. That's all yours.
Yeah, that is good, isn't it? Yeah. I'll be in touch with you later. Okay.
I have different things I do. So on Wednesday mornings, I teach a sun salutation class, and I have about 12 or 15 different types of sun salutations that I do and that I teach. And a lot of them are based on things that you find in Kushti, the Hindu wrestling tradition, the Duns and the Baitaks. You see, and you've always seen those things correlated within the Surya Namaskar practices anyway. But I highlight them, and there are a lot of different ways of doing Duns and Baitaks, so I use those within the sun salutations. I have some sun salutations that I just basically, kind of made up based on the progression of how your body moves. And a lot of the entry ones that we do are really good for strengthening the muscles in the back, the posterior chain of back muscles, which get weakened a lot through sitting in chairs and through modern lifestyle. There's a lot of focus on, say, core strength or abdominal strength. Those two are sometimes misconstrued as being the same. There's not as much emphasis on posterior chain of back muscle strength. So all the sun salutations I do in the beginning are to strengthen the back muscles and strengthen the hamstrings, which also get weakened from a lot of sitting. So we do some simple lying down practices, a couple of mudras, and then some simple things like Dvipada Pitam, half wheel, and etc. I have a couple of simple standing things to open the lung channels, 5 different positions for opening the lung channels, so you're ready to breathe calmly and smoothly and not too deep. And then we'll do these 10 or 12 different types of sun salutations, which might take 45 minutes. And then after that, we'll do 1 or 2 simple asanas, followed by Sarvangasana, Halasana, Shirashasana, a version of Bhadrasana, and slow breathing in Padmasana, and then you rest. So you move your body in a lot of different ways, but you have a deep sense when you're done that you've done yoga, that you feel like you are centered within yourself when you're done. So that's what I do 1 day a week. And then I have another class on Fridays that is a yoga and strength class where we'll do the preparatory lying down positions and the positions for the lung channels and a few different types of sun salutations. And then we do straight up body weight strengthening things, different types of push-ups, different types of planks, different types of abdominal strengthening things, a lot of different types of squats to strengthen the thighs. This is very
Is it still
important.
yoga class?
No, I call it yoga and strength. And
Okay, right.
well, and then the strengthening of the quadriceps is very important for longevity, because the quadriceps have all of our cells have mitochondria in them, and mitochondria, of course, are the energy packets of the cells. And these energy packets in the quadriceps specifically are associated with lifespan and with health span.
I've
And
heard
so to
that before,
stimulate
yeah.
and stimulate the quadriceps, there's a lot of research on it, is really important. And we don't strengthen the legs hardly at all in Ashtanga yoga or even in a lot of classical yoga. You have Virabhadrasana and Uttanasana, and that's basically it. But otherwise, you have people who do a lot of Ashtanga yoga. They come to this class and they do, there's 3 different types of squats a couple times. They can't walk for 2 days, and they realize how many of their muscle groups they're ignoring through repetition of practice. So, and then we finish that with inverted asanas, a couple of other classical hatha yoga asanas. And again, when you're done, you feel that you've had a bit of a workout, but you also have the sense that you've done yoga. And then on Sunday, I teach what is the practices that I mainly do and that I'm calling yoga sangraha. Sangraha is a Sanskrit word that means a collection or a compendium. And you see this word used a lot when there are books of collected mantra or collected ritual or collected practices, where they take the diverse things that are available for different uses and put them together in a particular way. And so I have a bunch of different types of sequences that are going to address the signaling of brain-body communication in different ways, depending on whether you want to calm the nervous system, energize the nervous system, ground the nervous system, or focus it. And then the standard classical asanas that you see in all the different yoga traditions will then be organized in sequences for those particular outcomes. But we do a little bit of everything in each practice, but the order that you do them is going to have a different effect. So, for example, say you have weak digestion and you need to stimulate yourself before you eat. Maybe you'll have a little bit of ginger or ginger and pepper, hot ginger pepper water to stimulate digestion. Maybe you have a lot of acidity when you eat. So before you eat, you might have something calming or cooling first, so that when you start eating, and you avoid the spicy things as well, but you still might have some grains and vegetables and stuff like that. Some people will stimulate their digestion by having something just a little bit sweet before they eat. So we're still eating food and the same types of food, but the order we eat the food is going to have a different effect on our ability to digest what we're eating. The most important thing about food is that you can digest it, not the diet that you're eating. What can you digest that will keep you healthy? That's what you eat. Same type of a thing is true for yoga. What can you digest? Those are the things you should do. And so it needs to be modified. So that being said, do I have kind of a formulaic thing, which is like a sequence, which is an entry-level thing? Yes, I do. I've tried it out on maybe 1,000 or 1,500 people or so over the past year and a half. And I get feedback from people, and I get feedback from my own body, and I make little adjustments to make sure that the overall effect of what I'm doing is positive. And then I enhance it in different ways when I need to. So those are the basic. And then we have Yoga Education Collective, where we have teacher training programs in pranayama, and now also in these asana sequences. And the pranayamas that we're doing, we also, they're very gentle. And we have like a level 1 and a level 2 and a level 3. The level 1 is based on very, very gentle breathing practices. And these have had really beneficial outcomes for a lot of people, and they're very easy and accessible for people to do. It's only in the level 2 practices that you actually get into things like kumbhakas and very light breath holds. And we're using the classical Ashta kumbhakas that you see in Hatha Yoga, as well as resonance breathing, different types of Vastrika that you see in North Indian traditions, and all things like that. I don't do any of the Ashtanga yoga pranayamas that are being taught. I never really felt those were so beneficial for me, so I was always defaulting to other practices I had known. So it's a very, very different collection of types of things. And I'm really, as you know, interested in science. So I read a lot of papers, and I take a look at the efficacies of the things that I'm teaching. And wherever there is some validation from science, I enjoy that. I enjoy validation of things that I discover in texts and why they're done. And there's so many interesting yoga texts to look into with a variety of practices that are very cool and very beneficial. So anyway, that's what I do right now.
That was an in-depth run through and very interesting. What about that? How much do you draw from old texts and modern science? What kind of crossover is there? People would like to know, I'm sure, about what old text you do use for and what modern science you do incorporate to inform this.
Okay.
And how the crossover happens.
Okay, so one of the crossovers is for the old texts. There is an interesting book called the Kumbhaka Paddhati, which was published by Kaivalyadam. There are 71 different types of pranayamas taught in that book. Very interesting book. Virendra Brahmachari, who is a North Indian teacher, has a lot of interesting practices in his systems, including Sukshma Vyayama and Sthula Vyayama, in different interesting ways of doing like Mahamudra and the different mudras, a lot of interesting things that he has. And there is the Lakulish tradition, which is also North Indian. A lot of asanas in there and interesting viewpoints on the three bodies, etc. So, and then at Vyasa, I was exposed to a bunch of different approaches to doing and different ways of approaching doing sort of the conscious relaxation practices that aren't necessarily really relaxation practices. They're more awareness practices that you use while doing deep rest. So that's, a variety of things. And then if you look into like medical science, there's not a lot of good research on, say, individual asanas. There is good research on the grouping of asanas. I use very little of that. Mainly, I look at science on breathing, science on what happens in the brain through activity, in different types of activity, the science on how, just to be very, very simplistic about it, forward bending practices generally are stimulating the cranial and sacral nerves, which is parasympathetic nervous system. The back extensions or back bending postures mainly are stimulating from the top of the lumbar to the top of the thoracic vertebra, which are sympathetic nerves. The twisting asanas are stimulating information flows, and cross-line body movements stimulate information flows from the right to left hemisphere of the brain through the corpus callosum, which is a thick band of neurons connecting those two parts of the brain. Inverted asanas like Sarvangasana and Halasana are basically forward bends, but upside down. So they have this sense in the nervous system, similar to what would happen through a forward bend, but going against gravity. So that does interesting things to the brain as well. So looking about how when you exert a pressure on a different part of your body, it's going to stimulate information between the body and the brain that the brain will respond to in different types of ways. And so I read a lot of stuff like that, and I apply that to what postures I choose to do and how I choose to do them. So for example, one example might be Dhanurasana, where if you do a half Shalabhasana and half Dhanurasana, where one arm and one leg is straight, the other knee is bent, you're holding and reaching back for your foot. If you cross your hands and you bend your right knee and hold your right foot with your left hand, and your left leg is straight and your right arm is straight, this is a cross midline body movement, which is very good for brain health and stimulates information flows between the right and left hemisphere. But you're doing it behind your body instead of in front of your body, which is even more helpful for brain communication. And you're stimulating the sympathetic nervous system in a controlled way. So it's both grounding and energetic at the same time. So now you're influencing multiple brain functions through a simple asana. If you know these things, when you do them, you can do them purposefully with a good effect, and not think, oh, this is just one level. Now I need to reach my hand up so I can go deeper into the asana. There's no idea of deeper that you need to have. There's only the idea of what is this doing between my brain-body communication, my brain nervous system. The brain is the nervous system, of course. And how is that going to enhance my interoceptive sense, my inner sense of what's happening in my body, and move towards, practiced levels of awareness that are very internal. So that's sort of the approach.
It sounds like an awful lot of kind of experimentation and changing things day to day to suit yourself and to suit the individual students. But you also feel you can kind of generalize this and give a general class as well, right?
I generalize it, and I do general classes as well. And I don't explain every single little thing. I don't want it to become completely cerebral. Like, I'm super cerebral about all of these things because that makes me happy. But I don't necessarily convey tons and tons of information in a class like that. I just let people's awareness figure the things out by sensing and feeling on their own. If they want to know more, they can ask, and every once in a while I'll say something. But it should not become an exercise in logic. It should become an exercise in awareness and sensation.
You feel like have you taken a lot of people over from the Ashtanga? Have people come over and followed you onto this, just out of curiosity's sake, really?
Some people have.
Yeah.
In New York, definitely. My Sunday classes were a lot bigger when I was teaching Ashtanga yoga, and now they're maybe 10 people less or something like that. Or, if you have a room of 40, 45 people with Ashtanga yoga, and that's how many the temple holds. Now maybe there's 30 or, 35. So maybe 10 or 15 people less. And that's 100% fine. If people like what they're already doing, fabulous. Do it, be happy. And then I need to teach and practice what makes me happy as well. And some people like it only as a practice to sort of augment what they're already doing. And that's fine too. They say, now that I'm doing these things, I'm having less injuries from doing my other practices. Or I'm finding out ways that I can adapt some of these principles you're using into the Ashtanga yoga practices I'm doing, and it's helping to make those sort of healthier for me. So that's great. I'm happy if that works in that way too. No problem. And I definitely noticed when I was traveling in Europe in May, that was the last time I really taught Ashtanga yoga, and I only taught one Ashtanga class in each different city that I went to, but everything else was all my current things that I teach. And the Yoga Sangraha classes and the Pranayama classes were considerably bigger than the Ashtanga yoga classes. And I thought, this is great. I thought, oh, this is really
Interesting.
fun. And
Yeah.
that gave me confidence because I self-doubt myself like all the time. But that trip really gave me confidence to say, you know what? I can just follow my heart and let go of these things which I'm not passionate about. I had taught anyway, so that's all.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just kind of more appropriate to the general public. I mean, the asana sequences we all know were, just without any further explanation, the asana sequences of Ashtanga are pretty extreme. So they don't. They if you're taking them literally, they exclude a major amount of people, or even people that simply don't want to do them. So if you're teaching a kind of as you are, that kind of allows so many more people to join you, which is great.
And not everything is for everyone. Like, again, that's why there's diversity in the world, because not everything is for everyone. And so we have to find the things that are for us and for other people, and enjoy and celebrate those things.
We're coming to the end, Eddie. I know you're a busy man. I don't want to keep you too long. But what about
make sure, another thing is we have to make sure. I mean, I have to make sure. I'm not going to speak for anyone else. I have to make sure I don't perpetuate any systems or ways of being as a teacher or person that are perpetuating harm or perpetuate, whether it's spiritual, mental, emotional, or physical, that hold dogma above the person, that hold rigidity, and inflexible sort of systems above people, above human beings, and above their needs. And that's what I was doing for a long time. I was holding this idea of a system in this dogma that I didn't know that I was so subsumed by. I was holding that above individuals, including myself. And so that's not really healthy. And so I don't want to, I want to make sure I don't fall into those same traps again of, was it helpful in a certain degree for some people? Sure. But I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. And I'm sincere about my love for yoga. And I put myself below a system, below a dogma. And then I enforce that upon other people for a long time as well, for which I, am deeply apologetic for, to anyone who I impose that on, rather than encouraging their own freedom and joy and happiness. And so, do we need structure? Yes, we need structure. The sun it does its thing. Our planet needs to spin at the rate that it spins. It needs to fly around the sun at the rate it does for life to exist. So we need structure. We need rhythm. We need routine. But we also know that all these things in nature that are expressing their own rhythms are allowed to do so. And when anything impedes them, it throws that rhythm off. And then it creates systems which are not healthy, like when we destroy the rainforests, or when we do pollute the oceans, or clog the atmosphere with greenhouse gases. We throw off the natural rhythms of things by not allowing things to be. So we do need structure as human beings, and we need to follow along with structure. But those structures can't be because someone else has decided for you, this is the way you have to do things for the rest of your life. Maybe this is how you do things for a certain period. And then at another period, you have the freedom to move on. And I didn't have that mentality for a long time. I had the mentality of, this is the thing you do for the rest of your life. And I had a plan of how I was going to get through the rest of my life maintaining this. And as you know, the best way to make God laugh is to make plans, So the universe will tell you different if that's what you do. So that's all. I don't know.
Or possibly be the plan to maintain fourth series up to the age of 70 or 80. I'd be interested in knowing that plan. That sounds kind of wacky.
I'll tell you my plan. Well, no, here's the plan that I had. And my plan was that I was going to be able to maintain doing all of my regular practices up until the time I was 50. And then at 50, I would stop doing third, fourth series and maintain third for as long as I could. When I was 60, I would just do up to the primary and intermediate as well. And then after 60, maintain primary series and all of the other asanas that I was still able to do comfortably. And then after 70, maybe only just do primary series. So I had this plan, like what did I think my body could handle up to like 70 or 80. It was ridiculous.
Actually sounds quite well, you know.
I was goal. No, I was goal driven. I was a goal driven person, and and again, not everybody is, but a lot of us are very goal driven, and so this was a ridiculous thing that I had in my mind, which obviously, as I tried to adhere to it, kept falling further and further and further away from me until before you know it, I'm not even doing Ashtanga yoga anymore. So it's hilarious. So
it sounds like in the end you would recommend. Would you recommend that everyone opens up out of Ashtanga at the end? I mean, it's a little bit putting words in your mouth, but it sounds like that would be the progression that you would recommend in the end. No,
I'm not. I'm not suggesting any progression for people, other than to listen and to follow along with the needs and the capabilities of their body in a sensible way, and to not adhere to something past the point where you should be doing it. And how do you know? We have to listen. Is this right for me? Is this good for me? Is this healthy for me? And is it nourishing me? If the answer is no, then we need to find something else. And we should have hopefully people around us who can encourage us in the right direction or show us the other things to do that are going to be beneficial. Right now, this is what I'm doing. Adam, when you invite me back on your podcast, perhaps a decade from now, I'll probably have something different to say. You know, I'm sure I will. But what will be the consistency? What will be the same? That I'm still on a spiritual quest, or maybe I'm completely fully settled in myself, but I'm still doing certain types of practices, and they're going to be different than what I do now, no doubt. And I look forward to seeing what they are, and we should expect that to be so. That the practices will change as we age and as we change and as our needs change, and that's good. That's positive. That's healthy. That's yoga.
Well, I hope it'll be in a couple of years, not 10 years. But I also expect that within that time, you probably have some more things to share, I'm sure. Look, just do a quick fire round at the end. I've got a few different questions to ask you. You don't have to think too much about this. And the first one is the biggest risk. So I think that maybe you've answered that already. The biggest risk in your life probably being one you've taken more recently, right?
The biggest risk in my life right now? The biggest risk I'm taking in being honest publicly.
Yeah, and it is, and it's inspiring. It's inspiring what you've done. I think it's inspiring to me and many people. So thank you. Best compliments you've had?
Best compliment I've had recently, that people like the new suit that I designed with my friend Susie Gandhi.
It's nice. Especially you can dance and do all that work that that guy did in it with the martial arts dancing. Amazing. Worst piece of advice you had?
Worst piece of advice?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I haven't been given any advice recently. My favorite thing about advice is what Groucho Marx said. Take my advice. I'm not using it.
I don't think there'd be that many people who would be willing to step in and give you advice, to be honest. What do you wish you were better at?
I wish I was better at time management.
Huh. I wouldn't have said that about you. Huh. And finally, what makes you smile? What always makes you happy? Makes you smile?
Connection with people.
All right, Eddie, that was good. Thanks very much for coming on again. Lovely to speak to you again, and hopefully speak to you in a couple of years. See where you're at then.
Yeah, I mean, we're always going to speak more often than that anyway. So thanks for having me
I
on.
hope so.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for letting me just blab on and on about whatever comes to my mind, and I look forward to the next time.
Absolutely, and thank you. I'm sure I speak for many people to say that was really interesting, and I'm pleased to hear it too. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Ashtanga